Yo, yo. Okay. You know what time it is. Back in action. We skipped out on last week. I've been traveling back and forth and stuff. I'm actually feeling a little sick right now. So I want to keep this video kind of short, to be honest. Um, but let's kind of review everything from the past 2 weeks. And we'll start with SPY, Bitcoin, and gold. And then I'll do a brief scan of anything random. So we're on the weekly chart for SPY. Going into this upcoming week, I don't really see anything to trade, to be honest. We're over here by the lows, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. I think one thing I'm keying into is going to be like a measured move. So if this leg, this move right here, if that's leg one, it's possible that we see leg two end up somewhere at a 392. And even when we get here, I don't necessarily want to buy down here. But we'll see what setup we get. But, you know, I'm interested to see if we're going to come test this area or we're going to kind of, because if we find sellers at the EMA, so let's say price comes up, touches this EMA, and then goes back bearish, that's our first sell signal. And we might ride that sell to this level. And even if price goes up to this previous resistance and then turns bearish, I would rather not see it go too much higher than this previous swing right there, this engulfing bar. But if it comes up in here and turns bearish, that's actually a sell signal. So we'll be kind of keying in for that. But until then, I'm kind of chilling on the weekly chart. You know, the past couple weeks, there hasn't been much to do on the weekly. We'll take a look at the daily. Maybe we can find some like shorter term plays. Let's see on the daily. You can start to see that there are some lows through there. Potentially the highs end up, yeah, probably about there. So there's probably a channel like this going on the daily chart. And so you might be able to get some call options. Calls aren't my favorite right now, even though we're at the like low side of the channel. You know, it's overall kind of a downtrend. And it's debatable. At this angle, you could almost say it's a range as well. It's gonna get messy, but I'm gonna take this off here in a second. You know, you could see the range as well if you just play it like a range, right? So it just depends on how you prefer to view that. I think for me, I prefer the range. It's just a little easier to manage. So I'd probably even just play the range. And if you're looking at a range, then this higher low isn't the correct bull setup, right? Like above this bar, you might buy, but we need to see a stronger signal bar for the higher low trade. I think if you were going to do like a off the top second entry, you would buy above a doji, but there's not really a second entry off the top. I mean, here's a new swing high. We get the first entry right there, then the second entry right there. So it's like a third entry. So you'd really have to count off the low side, which makes it like a higher low. And you don't necessarily want to buy a doji higher low. I do think the probability is that we will try to pop back into the into this range, but I just don't see the right setup yet. So I think on the daily chart, yeah, we don't know. Again, we don't know, but that's what the chart is telling us. The chart is definitely telling us that there's a lot going on, and we'll just have to wait to see which setup we get first, and that would be a big indication if we're gonna try to buy or sell somewhere down in here. Or actually, what would be concurrent with the analysis on the weekly chart is that even though we skip this buy, we would see price come up somewhere in here, and then we'd sell it in here, and that would end up being hopefully a second entry short or maybe like a lower high. And then on that weekly chart, that would be the weekly sell signal as well. So even though we would expect some kind of move up, we'll probably skip it unless the failed second entry sets up somewhere in here, and then maybe you take the failed second entry. But if this just shoots off, we're going to skip that and try to get short somewhere up in here. So we'll wait to see what actually sets up. So unfortunately, right now, there aren't a lot of trades. I think there's just a lot going on. But that's what happens. We'll probably sit on our hands, especially with that weekly chart. We'll end up sitting on our hands for a couple weeks, sometimes a whole quarter, and then once the trade hits, it'll hit, and we'll be ready for it. Let's move on. Let's do Bitcoin. Let's talk about Bitcoin. I know a lot of people on Twitter are like losing their shit over this because Bitcoin is only supposed to go up, but I don't know. We have the let's call it range, kind of like what we were talking about last time. We broke out this high side, so we're expecting it to come test this low side. That's kind of where we are now. I'll take some of those arrows off just to make it a little less cluttered. So if we look at Bitcoin, we're approaching the previous support. So now is when I'm interested in going long. If we get a bar that looks like this, a bar that looks like that, like that, like that, but it has to be the right way, but the structure of that bar. I'd be looking for price to come and test this previous area, about the 31,000 area, give us a nice bar, and then potentially try to buy that. It'll be even better if that move, that green bar, happens on the other side of this green line. See this line going through here? If we do whatever we're doing and then we get that green bar on this side, that'd be a really good sign as well. But that's not to say that we can't keep going lower. We have leg one right there. This was leg one, consolidation, and then potentially a leg two. Bitcoin coming all the way down to 12,000, I think would be catastrophic. So ideally, it won't come down here. But just looking at market geometry, that's maybe the next bear target if we don't find the buyers somewhere in here. So I'm pretty curious if if the news has any effect, or like the world situation has any effect on Bitcoin, because now is where I'd be gearing up maybe in the next couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, looking for that Bitcoin buy on the weekly. And then if we go to the daily chart, there ain't nothing to do but watch it sell off. We have that zone, so we're going to look for prices to kind of come back and on a shorter scale, come back and interact with the previous support. And if this support becomes resistance, that might give more credence to the sell-off to the 32 range. if we don't just keep selling off from here. Um, I don't really see anything too major yet. So we're just kind of on guard with Bitcoin and SPY and stuff. There's no shorts that I'd want to take. I'm trying to, let me see if I take a second and count the tops. You know, we have a previous top, higher low, failed second entry. So down here, we need something climactic, right? We need prices to make a pivot low, and then we'll start a count off the low side because there's no count off the high side. Or we need prices to kind of make that low, make a pivot, and break that pivot, and then we can count off that. But that gets a little bit in the weeds. So really from here, we're just going to be looking at the low side and trying to make a count off that low side because there's nothing we can use looking this way. So this next week will be really important for Bitcoin, probably the next 2 weeks. And we'll see if we can find anything off Bitcoin pretty soon. And then last but not least, actual gold. We just did digital gold. Let's talk about actual gold. We'll go to the weekly. So this is where we were with gold the last time we tapped in. We did get that breakout of the congestion zone. Everything still applies. I'm still kind of looking for prices to come up to this side, and then we'll try to sell it on this side. If only this signal bar was better, we'd have a second entry long, so you would buy above this bar, but this isn't bullish enough. So I don't recommend buying, and we're making like lower lows. The only nice thing is that it's above this EMA, but again, I don't think the signal bar is good. So I wouldn't buy above this bar, even though it's a second entry long off this high. First attempt to go higher, pulls back. Second attempt, you buy, but not in this situation. I think the only thing that would get me in long here is, and again, this would take probably another 2 or 3 weeks to happen. We break above, come lower, but we don't go lower than this pivot, and then the higher low has a bar that looks like this, or looks like this, looks like that. And then we can buy the higher low if it's still hanging out down here and ride that to this side. And then prepare to cover profits and see what kind of happens from there. Now, if it doesn't bounce back into the congestion zone that we have and it keeps trending lower, then our next trade to the downside would be the failed second entry. So essentially what we're looking for, and that's probably what's more likely maybe, is off this high, we went higher once, we went lower, and then if it goes higher again, when it fails and starts going back lower, that's a trade. And that might be the trade that gets us back down into this area. So that would, again, probably take 2 weeks because we need a bar to set up and then reverse and then trigger, or a bar to set up and then the next week bars break it. So about 2 weeks on that. So these next 2 weeks on every single market are actually pretty important. There'll be some key setups over the next 2 to 3 weeks on pretty much all of these charts. So let's wait to see what happens then. We'll go into the daily just real quick. See, on the daily, you start to see what I'm talking about because we have this pivot low. Now we have a higher low. This higher low isn't really bullish enough, in my opinion. So I wouldn't buy above that. Plus, you're going to buy right into the EMA. Probably not the best, but what might happen is that higher low, it triggers. We get above this EMA, get the failed second entry, and then it doesn't really matter the bar on the failed second entry. And whatever that failed second entry is, if we can get above this EMA, then you buy that. And on the daily chart, that might be a really good trade. You could probably ride that all the way to this side. And that could happen in the next week, seeing that play. That'd just be a little long play back to this side. So not yet. let's see if I'll keep my eye on gold during the week, and if I see the setup within the week, then I'll hop in and make a quick video explaining the setup. And then if we don't come back into this range and keep trending lower, if we get that resistance at the EMA, we'll probably get a second entry short. And we want to see bars that look like that, bars that look like this one, like that one. And if all of that kind of happens below this EMA, that might be a short worth taking. And we would expect it to probably test this pivot. And after testing that pivot, that'd probably be leg one, 2 legs back, and then leg two is just a little past that pivot down in there. So kind of contingency plans for the long side and the short side. Again, we just have to wait to see what will actually happen. I would say something that I'm seeing now real quick, not that I want to take that off, I just kind of want to move that. The count, right? So off this high, first attempt to go higher, second attempt to go higher, and then it fails. So there are aggressive shorts who went short, probably something like that, right? Some people go 1-to-1, some people go 1.5, some people go 2-to-1, whatever it is. I like to do 1-to-1 because it's kind of in between what most people would do. And then 1.2 because that covers like commissions and stuff like that. So there are aggressive shorts who went short, like right here off of the failed second entry. The thing that I personally don't love is, again, you're doing that off the breakout. And even though we have this close, a sort of pivot, I prefer when the pivot doesn't touch the range at all. I want the entire pivot to happen without touching my line. So the fact this touched, it's kind of nitpicky, but that to me is kind of a sign like, I don't know. And then you see how when it triggered, it kind of closed back inside of this area. You know, it could end up being one of those trades where it comes, it stops you out, and then sets up a re-entry, and then off that re-entry actually goes. So if you're in that trade short, I think the only thing that kind of would keep me out of it is that we had a touch. You don't want to really see that touch. But the much better trade is waiting. Let's see what we do if we pull up and then create that second entry. But if you're already in short, I mean, there's nothing you can do other than just wait. You know, maybe you'll get a couple legs in between and you can kind of manage whatever. But if you're already in, you're already in. So that's what that is. Not every trade is going to work. Not every setup is going to be beautiful. That's a given though. So nothing new there. So those are our 3 main markets. We're about 20 minutes in. I could probably do a couple other. Is there anything else that's just super random? Oh, let's do Palantir just because it's fun. Let's see what Palantir did. Here's a daily chart. Okay, there we go. See? So we were talking about Palantir a couple weeks ago, and that's pretty much doing what we thought it would. Pretty much what we thought. You get those 2 legs back to the EMA. Look at this second entry short. But this is off a weekly chart, so we were looking at Palantir back up in here. And you could have taken like the, I mean, I don't know if you want to short Palantir, but you could have taken a lower high. See this little lower high? So right here, let's see what type of price action we get. We're meeting the previous support. So again, the next week, next 2 to 3 weeks, going to be very crucial for a lot of different plays. So go ahead, get your money settled, get your money organized, figure out how much you're trying to risk on these next couple plays individually, and get ready because the next couple weeks will be important. So with Palantir, all I see is that a down move. Even if we get like a bull bar, you don't want to buy it. We're in a downtrend. We are far from that EMA, but we're under the EMA. I'm trying to avoid buying under the EMA. Your best trades are going to be selling under the EMA and buying above the EMA, you know. So ideally, I don't really want to buy unless I think the only thing that would be nice, which we kind of did, is that we have this trend. We broke outside and made a new low. So that second entry will likely snap to this EMA. So that is a good look. But again, we want to see a bar that looks like that, a bar that looks like that. You know, we don't want to see no dojis. We don't want anything that looks red. We need a strong bull signal. And then maybe you want to be aggressive and play kind of like a snapback to the EMA or something. But overall, it's really a downtrend. So I would be careful. I'd be almost even down here. You know, I'm more inclined to try to find a short. We're running out of real estate to the downside, though. We're at $9, so it can start getting crazy below $9 in terms of the way people react, in terms of selling, trying to get out of their positions. But I'm still on Palantir kind of bearish. Anything else cool? We talked about Twitter. Take a peek at Twitter. So with Twitter, y'all see the downtrend. Nothing's really changed. We've really just been oscillating in between these two ranges. There's not really much going on. For a while, I thought Twitter wasn't even going to be trading, and then you can see the volume is off compared to some of this when the news first broke. And even before the news, I think there was better price movement. Right now, most people in Twitter are kind of just sitting on their hands waiting to see what's going to happen. Although I did read that he secured funding for this deal. So here in the next few weeks, maybe there'll be some more movement. But Twitter ain't doing nothing. So I still have an opinion that we'll try to come close this gap at some point. Currently, we're in like a short-term uptrend. See how the price is above the EMA. So currently, you know, there is still the buyers supporting the price. But that can change in a dime, and then in a dime we'll be below it, and so then we'll see. So for now, Twitter's just kind of chilling. It's kind of stuck in no man's land. Man, is there anything like crypto-wise? Ethereum will pretty much be like Bitcoin, so we don't got to spend too much time on Ethereum. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same sort of situation going on with Ethereum. Even though we're here, you can see the downtrend through there, right? There's like a downtrend working through there. And this could even end up being a midline. So if that ends up being a midline, we could see maybe a bounce down in here, which is where these stems kind of are. So yeah, Ethereum's pretty much the same as Bitcoin. We'll be waiting to kind of just see what we get with Ethereum. And that's mainly it for today. Again, I'm feeling a little sick from all the traveling and stuff, so I'd rather keep it a little shorter, especially since there's not really much that's changed. But we'll be back at it next week, and hopefully some of those key plays that we were talking about with SPY and Bitcoin, we'll take a peek at those setups, see if it's time to take a trade or not. So until then, it's your boy Sean Goody, aka Kamal Hart, aka Trade Sage, and whatever else you need to throw on there to make yourself feel good. I'm out. I'll see you again next week. Peace.